we go to a lot of projects with him and work with him. And also Edward Turner, who is the Dallas Census coordinator. They're going to talk about the census, about redistricting, and we are very pleased to have as our moderator Mr. Trey Arnold, the political director for the Dallas County Democratic Party. Trey comes to us from being a paid staff member on the Obama campaign, both 2008 and 2012, and we were able to nab him after that. So I give you Trey Arnold.
Hey, thank you, Carol, Madam Chair, for that warm introduction. Everybody, welcome. This is the Dallas County Democratic Party Town Hall. Today we have some heavy hitters. We have two Turners, and like I said, both of them are doing major things here in the state of Texas. I'll start with Representative Turner, State Representative Chris Turner. He represents House District 101. He's the Vice President of the House Redistricting Committee. He's also a lifelong Texan. He grew up in Dallas and lived next door in Tarrant County for more than 20 years. Representative Turner is a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. And also, when he is not taking care of his constituents, he works as a communication consultant. So thanks again, Representative Turner, for joining us today on the Town Hall. Our next guest, we have Edward Turner. Mr. Turner is a former financial professional for the Texas Organizing Project. He served as a community organizer, and currently he serves as precinct chair for 3019 with a proven track record of community engagement, coalition building, and collaboration. He is the 2020 Census coordinator for the city of Dallas. Mr. Turner is also responsible for coordinating outreach efforts with the Complete Count Committee to increase awareness about the census and motivate residents to respond for a comprehensive census count in Dallas. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining us today. Before we get started, none of this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. We have Tillotson Law. Also, we have the Honorable Carol and Dan Donovan, Honorable Terry Barker, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo LLP, the Honorable Marcy Helfand, and Robert Book. Also, I can't forget Scott Perez LLP. So thanks again, sponsors, for making this possible. So what I want to do is I just want to start out with one question, and you guys kind of tag team on this. What would you say the relationship is with the census as well as just the whole redistricting? What would you say is a correlation between both of the two?
Sure. Well, Trey, thank you. It's great to be with you, and Gerald and Donovan, thank you for inviting me. I guess I understand that you originally tried to get Representative Tony Rose, who is on the redistricting committee, and of course represents Dallas County, and I'll be the first to admit I'm a very poor substitute for Representative Rose, so I know it'd be better to have her today, but she's an outstanding member of the legislature representing Dallas County, and serves on the redistricting committee with me. The redistricting wouldn't happen, at least not the way that it typically happens, without the census. The census is required by the Constitution to take place every 10 years. And it says very simply, we're going to count everybody who's present in the country. And given how populations change, populations grow, people move around, it's very important in the redistricting process to use the census data to ensure that districts adhere to the principle of one person and one vote. Because just take Texas, take North Texas, for example. This area has grown very quickly, as we all know, living here in this community. Other parts of our state have not grown as quickly, particularly in East Texas and West Texas. A lot of those areas are kind of flat in their population. So as our population as a state grows, we look at how many districts we have for the U.S. Congress, the state Senate, the state House, and those districts should be drawn evenly or as close to evenly as possible. And as growth occurs, that means that in large metro areas that are growing rapidly, like in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we need to be able to redraw those districts to make sure that they're roughly proportionate in population. And that's how the census affects redistricting.
Yeah, and one of the great things, first of all, Trey, thank you for having me on today. I do have to make this disclosure because I am a precinct chair. I am here presenting today on behalf of the city of Dallas. The city of Dallas is nonpartisan, and as such, this presentation and the city of Dallas Census 2020 outreach awareness is not affiliated with any political party. So I have to make that disclosure, okay? But one thing to go with Representative Turner said, because Dallas is growing, the EFW area is growing so fast that the state, and Texas is growing so fast that the state of Texas stands to pick up an additional 3 to 4 congressional seats. And that's powerful. That's more representation in Congress. Also, the DFW area stands to pick up one of those additional congressional seats. And they use census data to determine the powers that we have in Congress that represents us. So that's really important to know.
Okay, thank you so much. No, I definitely agree. We just had a question come in, and this is a question that's directed towards you, Representative Turner. Based on your experience as Vice Chair of the House Redistricting Committee, what are the chances that Texas will create a nonpartisan redistricting commission?
Sure. It's a great question. There have always been a number of bills filed in the legislature to create a nonpartisan redistricting commission. In fact, the committee heard several bills that would have done just that in the last legislative session. They were all bills filed by members of the Democratic Caucus, which I chair, and there were some really good proposals in there. Unfortunately, the votes are not there on the committee to pass any of those bills out right now. And the reality is, with Republicans in charge of the legislature, they, at this point, have no incentive to give away their power to draw the maps to a nonpartisan commission, because their track record is such that they have drawn maps on not only on a very partisan basis, but even more problematic, they've drawn maps on a discriminatory basis. There have been multiple findings of intentional discrimination over the last decade by federal courts as it relates to the Texas House, State Senate, and U.S. congressional maps. And that is a result of Republican lawmakers in Austin abusing their power and drawing maps that intentionally discriminate against African-American Texans and Hispanic Texans, and denying communities of color the opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice in multiple areas around the state. Obviously, a nonpartisan redistricting commission could really help to solve some of those problems and address some of the unfairness we've seen and unconstitutionality we have seen in Texas redistricting maps. But under our system, the legislature has to initiate the process. The legislature has to pass a bill and create it or put it as a constitutional amendment to the voters to let the voters decide. Either way, the legislature gets to decide. As long as Republicans are in charge, they've not shown any interest in passing that commission.
All right, thank you so much. If you're just tuning in, we have Representative Chris Turner as well as Edward Turner just talking about the census as well as redistricting and how everything kind of correlates together. So like, again, we thank you guys for being on. We have another question. This question came in reference towards you, Edward. Are the undocumented residents included with the census count?
Yes, the U.S. Constitution requires that everyone on U.S. soil be counted despite citizenship status. The only people that do not have to complete the census that's on U.S. soil is foreign visitors. So if you're here in America for a month just on vacation while the census is going on, you don't have to complete the census. But if you're documented or undocumented and you're here every day raising your kids, your family, you are to be counted.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, have another question that came in. This is, like I said, reference goes towards you, Representative Turner. Who actually draws the redistricting lines?
Okay, that's a great question. So in Texas, the legislature is responsible for drawing the districts. And so in real life, the way that works is the redistricting, the maps are essentially a bill, just like any other bill, that you're proposing a bill to become a law. And so different members of the House and the Senate will file redistricting bills, and it could be a bill to deal with state House or state Senate or the U.S. Congress or State Board of Education. And the redistricting committee in the House and Senate will hear those bills. If they pass one out, they would send it to the full floor, to the full House of Representatives or the full Senate, as the case may be. And then representatives and senators have the opportunity to propose amendments on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate to the redistricting bill, just like any other bill. And so in this case, you're proposing, if you're proposing an amendment, you're proposing a map or to replace a part of the map with your version of what you think the map should look like. But it is legislators who draw those maps using specialized software that the Texas legislature has access to. And so the House and Senate draw the maps just as they would write a bill. And the bill, if agreed upon by the House and Senate, is sent to the governor for the governor's signature. Now, one thing to note on that is under the Texas Constitution, if the House and the Senate do not agree on a redistricting plan for the legislature, for the House and the Senate, in the regular session, they try and they fail. The Constitution then says that the task of redistricting for the state legislature only goes to a body called the Legislative Redistricting Board. That board is made up of 5 statewide elected officials. It is the lieutenant governor, the comptroller, the land commissioner, the attorney general, and the Speaker of the House, who is not a statewide elected official but has statewide responsibilities. And then those 5 are charged with drawing the maps. The last time this happened, where that process was used, was in 2001. And obviously, with Republicans holding every statewide office right now, that would be less than an ideal outcome to have the LRB draw these maps again. If the legislature does not draw a congressional map or pass a congressional map, then that responsibility would fall to the federal courts, as it also has fallen in the past.
All right, thank you so much. Again, if you're just tuning in, we have Representative Chris Turner, as well as Edward Turner, just talking about census and redistricting, and like I said, how everything kind of correlates together. We have another question that came in, and this is towards you, Edward. We have someone that has a friend that has been in a coma. The young woman has been in a coma. She's a former nun and has never been married nor have children. She did not designate a healthcare proxy or give the power of attorney to anyone before this happens. How can she be counted?
Okay, well, that's a good question. And to be honest with you, I don't have a direct answer for that when it comes to someone being incapacitated inside of a hospital facility. Okay, I don't have a direct answer for that.
Okay, all right. All right, and once again, we would like to thank our sponsors that help us host this event. We have Tillerton Law, also the Honorable Carol and Dan Donovan. We have the Honorable Terry Barker, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo LLP, the Honorable Macy Helfand, and Robert Book, as well as Scott Perez LLP. Thanks again for being a sponsor for this town hall. So we have a question. This is this goes to Representative Turner. Once the census numbers are released, can those numbers be used to force the redrawing of fair districts?
Once the numbers are released, I see the question. Well, so once the process is, once the numbers are released, then basically the federal government sends a data file, and I'll back up. This may be too much detail, but there's a couple different steps here. So federal law calls for, by the end of this year, the end of 2020, for the Census Bureau to deliver to the President of the United States an apportionment file, which shows what the populations are of every statewide, and therefore how many members of Congress each state would get. That's apportionment. So as Edward said a minute ago, Texas is going to gain representation in the United States Congress because our population has grown, likely 3 seats, and bringing us to 39 members of Congress. So we would get that official notice. Under normal circumstances, we would get that official notice at the end of this year. And then by April the 1st, under normal circumstances, Census Bureau has to provide a data file to all the states that goes down to the block level, the precinct level and the block level, the census tract level, showing what the populations are. And it's from that data that districts are actually drawn. Now, to the question, can it be used to force the redrawing of fair districts? That's what's supposed to happen. The states are supposed to get the census data and then redraw the districts to be fair. That is the purpose of redistricting. That has not been the practice, however, in Texas. As I said, in the last decade, in 2011, Republicans abused their power to draw districts that were intentionally discriminatory against African American and Hispanic voters in the state of Texas. And they, frankly, you look at some of the rulings from the court over the last several years, there's great concern that if they have that level of power again, they would repeat many of the same mistakes. And so that's one of the reasons this is so important this year. Since I'm talking to the Dallas County Democratic Party, that we win the Texas House of Representatives. We have the opportunity to win a majority in the Texas House, and if we do that, we stop the Republicans' ability to have a complete control of the redistricting process. They still have an advantage because they have the governor, lieutenant governor, and the Senate, but they don't have complete control at that point. And that is one of the best things we can do to achieve a better outcome in terms of fair maps in 2021. Now, I need to add, I give you a couple of dates. Those are under normal circumstances. Some of you may have seen right now the Census Bureau is asking Congress to pass legislation to extend the deadlines because of COVID-19. Normally, what would have happened, and Edward could tell you more about this than I can. Actually, why don't I just defer and let Edward talk about that, because I think it's an important point, but you'll know more about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about this in my presentation, but what has happened here recently is that the last day to complete the census was July 31st. That date has been extended until October 31st, giving people more time to complete the census because of COVID. Also, something that's important to know is numerators. Numerators are the ones that's employed by the U.S. Census Bureau to come knock on doors of people who have failed to complete the census. They were supposed to start in May, knocking doors. That day has been extended to August 1st. So beginning August to October 31st, if you have not completed the census, numerators will be knocking at the doors. And that's one reason why we're trying to get as many people to self-respond now, so you don't have to worry about someone knocking at the door, especially in our undocumented and our low-income communities.
And because of those delays, because of COVID-19, normally when the data is delivered to the states no later than April 1st of next year, of 2021, the Census Bureau is proposing delaying that, I believe, till July the 1st.
Yes, July. Yes, absolutely. That's correct.
So we're talking delay of several months next year, but most likely.
Okay, thank you so much. That's some real good information. Also, we had a question come in, and this question was to you, Edward. What is census apportionment?
I don't know what that means. I don't follow. I've never heard the terminology before.
Okay.
I think if it's what I'm thinking of, I think when we say apportionment in the context of the census, that simply refers to the number of U.S. House districts allotted to each state. So redistricting is the actual drawing of the districts within the states. Reapportionment is saying, California, you didn't keep up in your population growth. You're losing a seat. Mm-hmm. Texas grew a lot. Texas is going to gain 3 seats. That's reapportionment.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Also, we have a question. How does gerrymandering affect democracy?
Wow. Edward, I guess you want me to take that one, right?
Yeah. I know you should take that one.
All right. that doesn't fall within your city of Dallas responsibility.
Absolutely.
Well, gerrymandering affects a lot about our democracy, and the term gerrymander goes back more than 200 years to the early days of our republic, and has to do with a district that was drawn to look like a salamander, and it was drawn, I believe, by a congressman named Jerry, and that's how they got gerrymander, how that word came into existence. But I guess in basic terms, gerrymandering is considered, drawing districts in creative ways to advantage or disadvantage a certain candidate or party. But it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What we need to be most concerned about, particularly here in Texas, is racial gerrymandering, and what we have seen from Republicans in Texas in drawing racially discriminatory maps, again, for the state House, the state Senate, and the U.S. Congress over and over and over again. And that's not me saying that they've drawn racially discriminatory maps. That's federal courts that have found that. That is the Department of Justice in the case of the last decade, all federal courts that have found that. And really, it is a sad legacy of Texas really since the Voting Rights Act was passed, or since Texas has been under the Voting Rights Act since the mid-'70s. Each decade, there's been at least one set of maps that has been found to be in violation of the Voting Rights Act. And so whether it's a violation of the Voting Rights Act or violation of the Constitution or both, Texas has a history of gerrymandering to disadvantage voters of color. And that's the single biggest threat when it comes to gerrymandering that we face. There's also what's known as partisan or political gerrymandering. The Supreme Court ruled on that last year and ruled that basically they said they didn't have the power or the ability to stop or decide upon partisan gerrymandering, and that would be an issue left to state courts going forward. So that'll be interesting after this next round of redistricting, if state courts take up some of those cases in the years ahead.
All right, thank you so much. And again, if you're just tuning in, we have Representative Chris Turner as well as Edward Turner. Just like I said, we're just talking about census and redistricting and how everything kind of correlates together. So I have a question for you, Edward. How does the Census Bureau obtain counts of overseas federal employees?
Yeah, so even overseas federal employees, they are able to complete the census. They will receive a census form in the mail to complete the census.
Okay. So much. We have someone just sent in a question, and this is for you, Representative Turner. Most of us are aware of the relationship between the count and redistricting. Please discuss how the count can affect public schools, social services, public health services, and public housing. This count is very important.
It is very important. I'm glad you raised that. Obviously, we talk about how census count impacts redistricting, but the census count also impacts federal funding. And there are billions of dollars at stake in federal funds every year in public education, in higher education, in healthcare, transportation, a whole host of federal programs. And if we don't have an accurate count, we lose out. And it's estimated for every, I believe it's every one, statewide in Texas, every 1% undercount in the census results in a population or results in a funding loss of about $300 million per year. And so that would be, of course, of a decade, $3 billion. And that's just 1%. So it's critical we have an accurate count because it costs our communities valuable federal funding if we do not have an accurate count.
Okay, and Edward, the same person actually wanted to ask the same question, but they want you to put on your community-based activist hat and answer that same question.
You know, y'all funny. Y'all are real funny. You know, I have to separate being my old community organizer to giving the correct answer. So I give you a blend of both, right? Okay. Federal dollars are so important when we think about our schools, and even as leaders, elected officials in the community, when they go and they advocate for more resources for their community, if the census data is not right, they can't get the additional resources that they need for their particular communities. So it's very important that we focus on the hard to count community. And the hard to count community is our communities of color, low income communities, our disabled community, our elderly community, to make sure that they're being counted. Because oftentimes people do not want to fill out the census, okay? So, and people have to be knowing and be aware that if they don't complete the census, you're ultimately hurting your community.
Thank you so much. Like I said, you know, none of this could be possible without our sponsors. We'd like to thank Tillerton Law, as well as the Honorable Carl and Dan Donovan, the Honorable Terry Barker, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo LLP, the Honorable Marcy Helfand and Robert Book, as well as Scott Perez LLP. And as well as we'd like to give a special shout out to our guests that we have today, Representative Turner, as well as Edward Turner. We thank you guys, you know, for giving up some of your Friday to come talk to some constituents and Dallas County, is just kind of about what's going on as far as the census as well as redistricting. Representative Turner, I know that you have another call, and like I said, you know, we definitely thank you for coming on. If we have any other questions, we'll definitely make sure that you and your staff get some, but we definitely thank you for coming on and definitely serving your district and everything that you do.
Well, Trey, thank you for having me very much today. It's great to be on with Edward, his old friend. You know, we've done some work together over the years, and it's good to see him. And Cheryl and Donovan, thank you for the invitation, everything y'all are doing. Again, you know, redistricting is critically important. The best way we can impact redistricting is to win the Texas House this year. And I'm counting on Dallas County for the clean sweep in House races in 2020. So yeah, I know y'all will get it done. So thanks for having me. Everybody stay safe.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, Edward, we just had a question that come in. This question is definitely for you. Are you finding that the Hispanic community is reluctant to participate in the census after all of the publicity about whether a citizenship question would be included?
Yeah, I mean, the reality of the matter is that the damage is already done. We can't run from the fact that that there was a proposed citizenship question to the U.S. Census that was rejected by the Supreme Court. And one thing we have to keep in mind about our immigrant community, even in the best of circumstances, they're already hard to count and don't trust the government as it is. So it's even more important that we at the city of Dallas, we're working with trusted voices and leaders in those immigrant communities to go tell those immigrants why it's important to complete the census and getting it done. But definitely, the fear is there. I mean, the fear is there before the census. The fear will be there after the census, in my personal opinion.
Right. Thank you so much. And it's real key, that people fill out the census, and, it doesn't take long. It may take 5 minutes at the longest.
10 questions,
like
10 minutes. 10 questions, 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's at the most. Like I said, I think it maybe took me 5 minutes to fill it out, so it don't take long. We have to make sure, that we get to close to 100% as possible, because like I said, these numbers affect, where these funds are going to go, and especially with a lot of these minority communities, we could use, some better schools, some better, everything. So, we definitely have to make sure that, everyone fills it out at 100%. And, so we can get some of these resources that we need to get.
Edward, I talked about this in my presentation. I will talk about it in my presentation.
Well, we can go ahead and get that. We can go ahead and set up. And like I said, you can kind of discuss everything that you want to discuss in that presentation. And while we're getting the presentation set up, I do have one question that came in. I know several homeless people here in Dallas County. Any chance they could work for the census?
Yes, the U.S. Census Bureau is hiring a lot of people, and the challenge was pre-COVID, the unemployment rate was so low, is that they're paying up to $25 an hour, and need to hire like 20,000 people. So anybody homeless, doesn't matter. You can actually apply, fill out a job, fill out an application, and work for the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay,
where would they fill out that information?
They will just go to www.2020census.gov/jobs.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And like I said, I know we have the presentation set up. So like I said, you'll be able to see it. And like I said, you just go through the presentation and give us information.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, next slide real quick. Okay, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this slide here because a lot of you all already know about the census. But one thing to really know, as we've already talked about planning for schools, transportation, and other community needs, we've already discussed that the census, because Texas is growing so fast, we will have an additional 3, possibly 4 congressional seats. One thing that's really good to know about the U.S. Census is that this is not the mom and dad census 10 years ago, okay? This is the first time ever you can complete the census online from your smartphone. And online, it will be in 12 different languages. If you do it over the phone, it's in 59 different languages. And it's safe and it's easy to complete. Next slide. Okay, here's just some updates I was going to talk about with the COVID-19 dates that have been extended. The U.S. Census Bureau has adjusted the operation timeline to the last day to complete the census is now October 31st. And I mentioned earlier about the census numerators will be knocking on doors beginning August 11th to October 31st. So that's something important to know. Next slide. Okay, so one thing, especially with our undocumented community, what people have to know is that your information is safe and is protected, okay, for 72 years. And what that means is that for 72 years, when I completed out the census, I'm just throwing out, Edward Turner lives in tract 145. The population is 5,000 people. For 72 years, no one would know that Edward Turner lived in tract 145. I'm just happen to be one of those people that live in tract 145. That's it. When my great-great-grandkids look at the census data, when I'm old and I'm probably gone, they would say, oh, great-granddaddy lived at 3011 Park Road. So that's something to think about when understanding that your information is protected. And one thing I want to make known to people, if the government wants to find you, the government can find you. That's not hard. But what they're not going to use to find you is census data. So that's something that people really have to understand. Next question. Next. Okay. There are important questions that the census would never ever ask because there are a lot of fraud information out there nowadays. They would never ask for your social security number, to donate money. They would never ask you anything on behalf of a political party, your bank account, or any information like that at all. So if anybody asks questions, that's not, if they ask any of these questions, that person is not a legit representative of the U.S. Census Bureau. Next slide. Now here's just here, counting for dollars in Texas. And also just let you know, Trey, you have this PowerPoint. You can share this PowerPoint with everybody who requested. It doesn't matter. But this is just kind of like a breakdown of counting for dollars in Texas. Our census dollars paid for, census data determines how much money are we receiving for Medicaid, SNAP benefits, $21 billion SNAP for Medicaid assistance, $5 billion just for the SNAP program. When we think about Head Start, this here is just an example of the way money is allocated in the state of Texas based off census data. So if we have an undercap, these numbers are really impacted. Next slide. So as Representative Turner stated earlier, what do we stand to lose? The state of Texas receives about $59 billion a year, okay? And like you said earlier, if we have a 1% undercount, we will lose $3 billion over a 10-year period. Another thing to know is that those monies do not just go back to, these are your tax dollars, and they don't go back to the Treasury if we have an undercount. Other states like California that's growing tend to pick up some of that money. And that does not only fall on the state level, but that falls on a county level as well as a city level. If Harris County has a complete count and Dallas County doesn't, Harris County stands to pick up more dollars. If the city of Dallas has an undercount and the city of Houston has an accurate count, the city of Houston stands to pick up those monies. So everybody is competing for these federal funds. Next slide. And here we're just talking about the $3 billion. And this just gives you an example. A 1% undercount in 2010, the state of Texas lost $3 billion in federal reimbursement just for the Medicaid program alone. That's just Medicaid. So imagine all the other programs that lost money too due to that 1% undercount. Next slide. So why does COVID make it even more important to fill out the census? Because right now, if you think about every other weekend, the North Texas Food Bank is feeding over 2,000 people. The North Texas Food Bank uses census data to determine how much food they're going to receive, okay? That's what they look at. When you think about our healthcare workers that are on the front line, the amount of resources they're receiving is based off census data. When you think even natural disasters, a tornado just happened in North Dallas. What did they do with the Office of Emergency Management in the city of Dallas, as well as FEMA? They don't ride around and looking and see, oh, I think 5 people live here and 2 people live there. No, the first thing they do is look at census data. And based off their census data, they determine how to deploy the resources depending on the level of the crisis. So that's something to think strongly about, is that we can't predict the next pandemic, but we can predict that natural disasters will happen. And that's when census data will determine how that will happen. I'll give you another example. In the southern sector, if we have an undercount, and let's say, for instance, they say, well, census data said there's only 10,000 people that live in the impacted region. But there's really 20,000 people living in the impacted region because people didn't complete the census. Well, how do the government know to deploy resources to service 20,000 people? Just something to think about. Next slide. So as we all know, the city of Dallas is the 3rd largest city. We're estimated to have about 1.39 million people, and that's just the city of Dallas proper. That doesn't include Dallas County and the DFW Metroplex. Okay, next slide. So a lot of federal dollars come to cities directly when cities apply, when municipalities apply for direct funding and grants. The city of Dallas receives about $34 million a year. And last fiscal year, they received about $34 million based off census data. And those monies went to community development block grants. Right now, during the COVID crisis that's happening, the federal government is sending money in the form of community block grants to fund a lot of the aid that's coming in the city of Dallas. That's Dallas. They're doing the same thing for every city in the U.S. that's impacted by COVID. So this is just an example of some of the funding that the city of Dallas has received. This chart does not even include the amount of money that we receive for the WIC program or our homeless initiative. Well, this does talk about homeless initiative programs, but other programs that are funded by census data as well. Next slide. So, like I mentioned earlier, this is not your mom and dad census. For the first time ever, we're able to get real-time data on how our city, state, and as a nation, how we're responding to the census. So this here, as of May, actually, this is not May 3rd, May 13th. I do apologize for that. As of May 13th, we had a national response of 59%. The state of Texas is finally over the 50% range at 53.7%. Dallas County is at 54.9%, and the city of Dallas just got over 50%, and we're at 50.9%. And there's other cities that are doing a lot better than the city of Dallas with their self-response rate. Next go. So what we're doing as a census team to make sure that everyone is counted, we have shifted our outreach efforts to more of a virtual outreach effort. So we're promoting census information on social media. We're doing verbal webinars. We've had a couple of D-Day census parties. We're doing census challenges within the individual departments, as well as moving the same census challenges to our complete count committees. Our email campaign, as well as our partnership outreach. We're reaching out to various partners to see how they're adjusting to COVID and making sure that they're still getting additional resources to explain to people why the census is important. Next slide. Here's just a map when I talked about hard to count. The city of Dallas has 197 hard to count tracts, and that estimates about 962,000 people are living in hard to count tracts. When you look at this map, you see dark blue and you see light green. The darker the blue means the hardest to count. The lighter the green is the easier to count. If you notice in this map here, a lot of North Dallas is green. A lot of Southern Dallas is blue. And what that says is that the Southern sector is not getting the resources because because they're not completing the census. The census is really as equally as important to voting. Because if you're not counted, how do we know how to deploy resources to a particular community? Next slide. So here, what we've done at the city of Dallas is that we've broken the census data down, not only by tracts, but we went a step further to break it down by individual city council member districts. And here's a map of District 8. And what you see on District 8 is a lot of blue. And because census data does not adhere to district maps or anything, or even zip codes, the data that we have to present, some of this data bleeds over into other municipalities like Lancaster, Duncanville. So we have to talk about the whole tract. We just can't break it up. We have to talk about the whole tract. And if you look at the Southern sector, there are a lot of hard to count communities. And that's why we're working with our partners to make sure that people in these individual communities are being counted. There's a lot of dark blue. Next slide. Okay, I'm gonna skip this slide here because it's kind of hard to read, but next slide. So who is at risk of being counted? In the city of Dallas, the hard to count population is our immigrant communities, low income households, people of color, people who move frequently, because oftentimes people are looking for the next rent special to move. Young children, oftentimes young children are not living in traditional households. They might be living with auntie, they might be living with granty. You might have a situation where you might have the Johnson family living in a household, And then you got the Thomas family living there temporarily. Well, when the Johnson family get information about the census, they only count themselves and not count the Thomas family. That's why we want to make sure that everybody in that household is counted. Even that cousin that's sleeping on the couch from couch to couch. We all got that family member. If that family member is on your couch at the time when you complete the census, you count that cousin, okay? Believe it or not, the easiest to count is the homeless population. Why? Because the homeless population is out in the public. They're going to get resources. They're easy to count. The hard to count people is, I don't know if y'all ever been in this situation where your power goes out, then you come outside and you're like, man, everybody's power is out. And then all of a sudden you say, I didn't know all them people live in that house. Yeah, because people don't want to be found. And those people that don't want to be found are the ones who need to be counted. Next slide. So what are we doing when it comes to children under 5? And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but typically newborns, people don't know to count their newborn children, kids living between households, and children living in low-income communities. So we want to make sure that those children are counted, because if a child is undercounted now, think about over 10 years, when that child begins school, the amount of money that will be lost for that child's education over 10 years. So keep that in mind. That's why it's important that all newborns and babies are being counted. Next slide. So what are we doing? We're partnering with our educational institutions, independent ISDs, Head Start centers, charter school, daycare, YMCAs, any institution that is directly working with children, we have worked with them to make sure that they are creating opportunities for parents to complete census. Now we had to adjust that because of COVID, but we have made those adjustments. Next slide. Our minority communities in the city of Dallas, African Americans are 3 times as likely not to be counted. 1 in 3 African Americans are living in hard to count census tracts. The same thing applies to our Hispanic community. So we have to keep in mind that they are traditionally hard to count. Next slide. So what are we doing? We're working with our local faith-based institutions, local schools, our crime watch groups, hyper-local businesses. And because of COVID-19, before COVID-19, we was penetrating beauty shops, barbershops, and nail salons to talk about the census, but we will reach out to them again once everything opened back up. Next slide. And our community-based organizations, the fraternities and sororities, the various organizations out there, we have been doing census trainings for them so they can understand that they are trusted voices. A person is more likely to believe their pastor about the importance of the census before they believe someone like me. So it's very important that the pastors and leaders in the community know what the facts, what the truths, and what the myths are about the census so they can influence people in the hard to count communities to complete the census. Next slide. Okay, redistricting. I won't spend a lot of time on this because Representative Turner kind of talked about it. In the city of Dallas, redistricting does not only take place on a federal level and with state representatives, redistricting also takes place in the non-partisan area. The city of Dallas will have to do redistricting based on population shifts. EISD will have to do redistricting based on population shifts. The same thing with the county. Dallas County Commissioner Court will have to do redistricting based on a population shift. So lines will be redrawn based off this 2020 census data. Next slide. And this here just talks about the process. The county has a process, the ISD has a process, the city of Dallas has a process on how they start their redistricting committee and the process on how it gets done. Next slide, and I'm almost done here. So here's a resource guide. You can go to 2020census.gov to get additional resources, get YouTube channels. Here's also the phone number that you can call to complete the census in English as well as Spanish. City of Dallas, we do have a toolkit, a website at dallascensus.com that you can go to, click on, and if you want marketing material, different information about the U.S. Census, all of that is right there. at your fingertips. And if you need additional information, please feel free to reach out to me. Next slide. And here's my information here. I external relations manager at the city of Dallas is Elizabeth Saab. This is her information, and my information as well is below. Trey has his PowerPoint. He's welcome to share it with anyone who wants it. Those links are active on that PowerPoint, so all you gotta do is click on those links, and you can get all the information, all the resources, and my information is there. If you have any questions or concerns, want to be involved or be engaged on getting the count out, please, please, please reach out to me, and I can definitely help get you involved with my complete count. Thank you for your time. That's the end of my presentation.
All right, we want to thank our speakers again. We had Representative Chris Turner on the call, as well as Edward Turner. Like I said, just to give you this information again, Edward Turner, edward.turner@dallascityhall.com. He is the 2020 Census Coordinator. So please, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to him, and I know that he'll get back with you. So thanks again. Also, of course, none of this would be possible without our sponsors. We'd like to thank Tillerson Law, also the Honorable Curl and Dan Donovan, the Honorable Terry Barker, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo LLP, the Honorable Marcy Helfand and Robert Book, as well as Scott Perez LLP. Thank you for everyone who tuned in for the town hall. Again, like I said, thank you for the speakers, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.